What is the relationship between pain and suffering and the ego? And how can we dissolve pain and suffering and end their relationship?
Pain and suffering are all created from the ego. And it's kind of interesting because we have pain that becomes more internalized. We have suffering that starts to become more externalized. But all of this, it resides around all the contemplations, all the huge, huge, huge decisions that were made. And the mental level hooks into this, and the egoic structure tries to thrust with this. And then we go into self inflicted judgment that becomes more and more and more internalized. And as it's becoming more and more internalized, the pain becomes more and more hyperly sensitive. And then, as that's becoming more and more hyperly sensitive, your body principle that's normally like this, and waking up, opening up within all these particles of divinities and particles of light, well, what happens? It just starts becoming more and more solidified. And it's kind of interesting because it becomes more solidified, but then, of course, it starts to become internalized. And as it becomes more and more internalized, oops, got the E. Okay. It starts becoming like an arrow going direct into your solar plexus, and then, of course, direct into your pineal and pituitary gland, then, of course, direct in through the dermis, epidermis, subcutaneous layers, and then it starts growing steam, whether it be the pancreas, the liver, the spleen, the intestines, the digestive system, and so forth. And then at times, even in the brain, everything just goes completely tilt, becoming a totally, completely, thoroughly emotionally dyslexic. And as it becomes totally, completely, thoroughly emotionally dyslexic, we start, I say we, but technically the egoic structure creates more and more judgments. And then before you know it, it's like a big giant mountain to climb within your consciousness and within your body principle. And it's becoming more and more and more thrusted towards you. And then all of the sudden, we're on total complete of the crucible, really. And almost as if we're being impaled on a stick. And it's interesting because the ego feeds and feeds and feeds and feeds and blames and judges and so forth to where you start becoming more, like I said, more solidified, but also smaller. All from all these interesting perceptual judgments or decisions with all of that energy backing it up, let's just say behind it, because it's kind of like whoosh and then bam, here was the decision made about oneself or made about the world. And it gets bigger and bigger and bigger until we say, enough. And I say that when we say enough, but it's really when we mean enough's enough. And I'm not going to be hijacked. I'm not going to be bamboozled. I'm not going to be overtaken. I'm definitely not going to go through all these interesting, I'll call it lower levels based from the solar plexus down and all of the what we'll call primal levels. And we're not being ran by the primal levels, and we're bringing them up vibratorily, but also very directly to where we have the root, we have the creator circle vortex, solar plexus starting to merge with the heart and then emerge in the heart level, merging upwardly and downwardly, to where from there we have a total, complete, integrated beingness, but all of this other stuff starts going out, 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 and dissolving because we're not just going to hold our breath and let it become more and more built up, more and more internalized. We're saying goodbye, goodbye, goodbye. Namaste, have a blast and goodbye. And that's where we start going into more of a hyperdrive speed, more of an openness and vibrancy speed that we're emanating, that we're activating, and that we're amplifying right through. And then we start to feel the technical flesh. And even as we're feeling the flesh of the physicality without any sort of thought whatsoever, we're not contemplating the thoughts, we're not contemplating any identities. What we're doing is we're letting the flesh be such a beautiful barrier, saying not happening, not happening, but then we connect with it because remember, the flesh doesn't have an identity, it doesn't have any emotion. It's really just a presence within itself. It's the largest organ of the body, but it's just a presence within itself to where now we've reached once again a 0 point to where we're not high, we're not low, we're not even in a lull, we're just constant at a 0 point. As if you just went into the womb and without picking up on any baggage from the moms or the exponential world or dad or siblings, offsprings, and so forth, but where you're just there in a total complete 0 point or isness, a state of in-between realms, a state of in-between worlds, and where even, Mother Earth, Father Time no longer even has any effect upon you, and you're not being controlled, you're not being dominated, you're not being overtaken by it, but you are so beautifully starting to arise and now starting to emanate such a beautiful presence, and where, regardless of anyone or everyone on the planet, where we're not sucking in or being sucked into any colorful identifications, even when it comes to what other dear ones want you to be or how to be. Well, namaste, brothers, have a blast, but we're not taking that in, we're not taking it on, and we're not going through that undertaking of starting to be what everyone else wants us to be rather than ourselves. And now we're switching tracks and letting ourselves begin to open up, come up, and start to be more and more exposed, more and more shown. Because remember, we're welcoming yourself from your higher levels through the soul level, all the way through. And by the way, your higher levels are you. That's just the higher vibratory level of you. And then from here, letting it come all the way through the soul level of consciousness, starting to break it up, dissolve it, of even your Akashic record realms of consciousness, and also through all the levels we went through earlier of incarnations and all the splits, even within those rungs. But now going from the soul level all the way up through the emotional calibrational lattice work, all the way through the sub-psyche, and starting to really purify it, divinitize it. And then from here, opening and opening and opening more and more and more, because it's kind of fun because we have one thought, another thought, another thought, another thought, another thought, another thought, all deriving from the sub psyche. Hello. And now we're creating spaciousness that becomes larger and larger and larger through the 0 point of consciousness, to where all of this is losing all of its momentum and effect within your physical manifestational world, and how we're letting it all die off. But then you're coming in, you're expressing exponentially, you're embodying, integrating, and we're stepping through all these portals. And this is technically a portal of the egoic structure, because right now we're saying stop, 0 point, and then this beautiful spaciousness and unending, quite literally, clarity, begins to emanate and emanate and emanate and permeate. It's kind of like the planet with all of the atmospheric realms and the astral planes and so forth, so forth. Well, we're going direct right through all of that, being unaffected by any and all of any other preoccupations and influences. And we're just going direct, which in turn, automatically, quite literally, it starts to affect our physical matrix, the fourth dimension. It starts to affect all the unfoldments within the third and fourth dimensions. And it's also starting to affect magnetically everyone and everything and situations as well. Because now they start breaking away, dissolving, because we're no longer in the midst, anchoring it in for those continual unfoldments after unfoldments. But yet, the interestingest part is that it goes also to a 0 point, to where now everything else that we've been putting out there for great ease, great enjoyment, and great fluidity, well, now we just created a huge opening right through here for all of the manifestations to come into form, or shall we say, into the physical. Now, as we're doing that, we got rid of all the clutter, all the filters, all the bunching up and gunk that goes with all of it. And even right now, when you go there with me, you can even feel how much deeper your body's breathing, because even your body's going to act, react, and respond to not having any of that gunk anymore. And all right, namaste, have a blast, goodbye, goodbye, goodbye. You may go through sweats, you may go urinate a lot or defecate or whatever it may be, but no matter how it is, your body's releasing the gunk, the cause, the core, the recurring effect of it, all the way through the subatomic level, all the way from the human genome level, which now we're able to reclaim our humanness, which is creator in mammalian species levels, but yet no longer being polarized, no longer being dualized. Because remember, from thought to thought to thought, these are all, any way you look at it, dualities. And the dualities that more often than not, actually they just do, period, they push and create distance between themselves. They're like a constant bombardment. Okay, and that's when you have split personalities, split levels of consciousness, polarities, dualities. But now, as I was showing, we're going right direct through the core of it, through the 0 point, and 0 point neutrality isness. But then that's just one state. And then we go through that to start opening up, integrating, emanating, and permeating so passionately, so powerfully, exponentially, that we start to affect the whole world, everyone on the world, including the planetary matrix, including the dissolvement of the astral planes of consciousness. And we start to have a directness through the mass collective thought forms all the way into and through the cosmic lattice work. And we start connecting with the cosmic lattice work, or let's just say accessing it. And the cosmic lattice work is such a fun one because it brings the unmanifest into the manifestational realms. So now we're just going direct, but also being able to enjoy the processes.